from two of the coolest people I know who happen to be doing incredibly interesting things, Amanda Finley and Jason Tennenhouse of Tennenhouse. Thanks to both of you for being with us today. We're excited to learn about this super exciting topic. Participants, just a quick Zoom refresher. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom windows. Jason and Amanda, you're welcome to take it away.
Hi, can you guys see us? Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Hey, everybody. Yeah, thank you for the intro, and we're happy to be joining you guys today to share a little bit about our experience in networking and doing interesting things. We're going to start with both kind of sharing our bios, and I'm going to share a bit about my experience in networking, and then Amanda's going to share her experience, and then we'll have some time at the end here to take questions, and we'll shoot to have all that done by 1 o'clock. Sound good? Okay. We get no feedback from you whatsoever. We can't see your videos, so please use the chat liberally to give us some feedback on things you like or don't like, and you feel free to ask questions as we go too. We'll just circle back at the end to answer those things. So I am, oh wait, why don't you start with your bio first?
Yeah, sure. So hi guys, I'm Amanda Findley. I'm currently the managing director at Matchbox Co-working Studio. I have been in Lafayette for 11 years, and I think that officially makes me a local, so I'm excited to claim that status now. Before moving to Lafayette and I guess moving to Matchbox, I was part of the founding team at the Purdue Foundry, and prior to that in the Purdue Research Park, where we are today. I run a co-working space and I'm in someone else's co-working space right now, so that's a little bit weird. My time in Lafayette has been kind of centered around working with startups and small businesses, founders, freelancers, entrepreneurs, both at the university and in the community. Prior to that, I worked in women's health and marketing. My background is PR and marketing. And I think I realized when I was making my notes for this session today that I am an insecure extrovert. So that is my networking style. And I'll share a little bit later about what that means to me and what some of my community networking, I guess, has looked like.
Thanks, Amanda. All right. I went to Purdue. I've got degrees in industrial design and psychology, minors in political science and philosophy, and I did a dual degree major in industrial design and the business school at Purdue. I went into the toy industry initially. So I was head of new product concepts for a large toy company down in St. Louis. I worked as an exhibit designer at the Children's Museum for a while. I did the treehouse up on the 5th floor, if you've been there in the past few years. I started my own toy company. And then I had a major shift in my career, and I went all the way into the nonprofit field, and I became an ordained minister. I was a firefighter. I was a hazmat technician, a Homeland Security incident commander. I went kind of full on nonprofit. I was a guest instructor at the university. And what I found in the first part of my career is it was not quite purposeful enough, and the second half of my career was not quite fast enough. And so I tried to find something between those two, and I started my consulting work. So I started a Grey House coffee shop in downtown West Lafayette. I started Matchbox Co-working. I started a nonprofit business accelerator during that time. And then I just started doing work for other people like Spencer Technologies up in the research park. I've worked for tiny little nonprofits. I've worked for startup companies. I've done equity positions. I did some work for Cummins Engineering down in Indianapolis. I've done work for Google as I helped them design their new headquarters. And I did a little bit of work for the White House. So I've worked with a ton of different people over the years. I've probably had over 100 clients since I started consulting, and have helped in some form or fashion start probably over 250 startups. So that's kind of my background also. But I want to tell you about networking. So the background and the variety of different things that I've done, I think are relevant to that because let me share kind of my networking style. So I feel like it's funny that, when Bree asked me about, sharing on networking, I don't feel like I network at all. Like I'm not sure I could ever think back to a time in my life when I have done something that I would explicitly call networking. To me, that's wearing a suit and passing out business cards and making sure I say the right thing and making sure I shake hands the right way. And I don't think I've ever done that in my entire life. I don't think I've ever done actual like explicit networking. But after, and I used to just say that to people, right? I would always just say like, I don't network. I'm not a networker. But then I realized after several years of saying that, I think I network all the time. I think everything that I do, I think of as networking. It's just not explicit networking. So that's kind of my style. So I feel like I'm never networking and I'm always networking. But the reason that I think that works for me is I just get genuinely interested in people's projects. So, when I sit down and talk to somebody, it doesn't take long before I get interested in what it is they're working on. So I get curious, I want to ask questions about it. And in that sense, I think people think of it as networking because I'm connecting with them. To me, I'm really just genuinely curious and trying to keep me, myself, interested in things. I also have a tendency to try to give away work. Okay, so it's a little hard to explain, but so most consultants, they'll get a coffee with somebody and they'll sit down with them and they will try to, talk a little bit about what they can do for them, and they'll maybe hint at what the deliverables will be, but they'll mostly listen, and then they'll try to get a contract, and then on the other side of that contract, they'll start delivering, solutions. And I don't think about it that way. Now, again, this might be bad advice, but this is how I do it, is I'll sit down with somebody who has a problem they've shared, just over a coffee, and I will try to solve their problem if I can right then in that meeting. So they're telling me what their problems are, and I'm just trying to like brainstorm on the spot. Have you thought about this? Have you done this? I'm like, got my phone out and I'll like forward them to people, or I'll send them, books or resources or websites that I've read. And my goal, I think in my head, is to just solve their problem right there in that coffee and be done with the engagement. And if they feel helped, they've got the advice that they need or the directions that they need, then we're done with that engagement and they're happy and they're on to their next thing. And I think I'm fine with that. Like, I think I approach these things as genuinely being interested and genuinely wanting to help. And sometimes that is the end of it. But sometimes they're like, hey, that was really helpful. Now I want to run this past you or this other thing by you, and or maybe connect you with someone else. And so oftentimes it leads to work, or it leads to other, connections. And I look at those the same way I looked at the initial thing. But to me, I think that's one of the takeaways from my experience is I'm not trying to get work. I'm trying to give away work. I'm trying to solve problems. And if I can solve it in one meeting for nothing more than a cup of coffee, then I really am happy to do that. I feel like I've helped people and I've got a good connection.
I used to joke, I just have to interject.
Mm-hmm.
I used to joke that I put the free in freelancing. Because if I can do something like quick and easily for someone, and it can build a little bit of trust and rapport and make them believe that I can deliver something that's valuable to them, I'll put the free in freelancing. Don't, but not often.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a key thing. And then another thing that I think I do when I have clients is, we've got scope and we've got deliverables, and I'm trying to work through the expectations, but I also don't want to be done with that engagement until they really are genuinely happy, right? My goal is for them to kind of write the check at the end to thank me, to pay me for my time, and for it to feel like super easy and like a deal for them, right? So yes, maybe we're done with the explicit scope, but I can tell they're not super happy yet, then in my mind, I'm not done yet. So I'm going to give them a little bit more than they expected, or I'm going to hang in there a little longer. And if they are being respectful of my time, and the reason why the relationship is growing is kind of out of their hands, then it's easy for me to kind of hang in there a little longer and continue to try to provide value to them until they really feel genuinely helped and happy about what it is we're working on. So here's a story I think that's interesting about networking for me is because I work with a lot of different clients and I have relationships with a lot of different types of people in different spheres, I end up sometimes in these unique situations where I'm working for multiple people that work together, right? I can often be a connector just by my client network. And so that occasionally happens. And a funny story about it once was I was working for an ag tech company here in town, and the company exited. They had a nice exit, and that was good. And I had a good experience there. And then I ended up working for another company, and that other company hired me for a few months just to kind of get them launched and on their feet. And part of that engagement was to find a leader, help them find a CEO. And so I put together kind of the job description and the interview questions for, you know, what I think they should be looking for a CEO. And one of the people that ended up applying for that job was the person that was the former leader of the company that exited. And so he calls me up and said, you know, hey, do you think I should apply for this job? And I said, definitely, you'd be perfect for this thing. And so he asked me if I could help coach him on how to answer the interview questions. He didn't know that I wrote those interview questions for this other client, right? So I coached him on interview questions as a client. And then he nailed the interview, of course, right? Because I wrote those questions. And neither one of those parties knew that I was working for the other party, but they all were very happy that they were able to find exactly the person they were looking for and get a good start. Then once this former leader of this company that exited ended up getting hired by this new company, you know, he turned around right away and hired me to come work for him again, doing the same thing I had done when I worked for him previously on the company that had exited. So it was this very interesting, you know, kind of like circular thing that was happening because I was working with all of them at the same time, all leading the same direction. And that's really cool when you can get something like that to happen. That's a fun story. Okay, let me talk about a couple mechanics, like very concrete things, not just like abstract things that are kind of just my 2 cents about networking. And I'll give an example of it, and then we'll pass things over to Amanda. So I always feel like when I give advice like this, I'm a little self-conscious about it. I don't know if it's good advice or not. So I like to kind of just say, probably half of what I'm going to share with you is wrong, but I don't know which half. Otherwise, I would edit it myself. So you guys are just going to have to listen carefully and feel free to do whatever editing you need to do. So mechanically, whenever I'm making an actual connection with someone, it's usually over email these days. I always ask both sides first. I see a lot of people not doing this, and I think it's disrespectful of people's time. When I'm on the receiving end of an introduction, I always prefer that too. So what I'll do when someone asks me if I can make an introduction, then I always go contact that other person privately and say, hey, so-and-so has asked, you know, for an introduction. This is what they do. This is what my opinion is of them or of this opportunity. Is it okay if I go ahead and make an introduction? And if they are cool with it, then I'll go back and do it. If I come up with the suggestion of an introduction between two people, I always will get permission from both people individually first. Hey, do you know so-and-so? I think they could be really helpful with you with this. And they go to the other person, is it okay if I introduce you? You know, and I get permission ahead of time from both people. I think that's really important. And then I always defer to the person that I think is going to have the harder time scheduling. So the email, then if in a scenario like that, where I'm introducing both people to one another, I'll always address it to the person whose schedule I think is the more challenging one. Hey, person who's super busy and has got a ton going on, I'd like to introduce you to so-and-so, and here they are, you know, CC'd on this email, and here's, you know, what's going on. You know, I think that's important to be very deferent of people's time and respectful. Whenever I am suggesting a networking connection for other people, I always create like a very short time limit. Hey, do you have 20 minutes to talk to this person? You know, without a lot of expectation attached to it. And then the next thing that works for me is when I make the introduction of email, I take time to go research both of their LinkedIn pages, and I get just like really schmoozy with it. Like, I think it's really an opportunity to flatter people. It's going to make a stronger connection. If they have any respect for you at all, it's going to make a stronger connection when you are making a very strong recommendation. But it also reinforces your network with those two individuals when you can take the opportunity to kind of brag on them to someone else. So I really go over the top with it. And I very often get, you know, responses back from those individuals with follow-on discussions, you know, because of the time you take to do that. And it's just nice to treat people well and make them feel good, you know, remind them of what they do that you think is valuable. I also will always put something in my introduction, like I'll let you guys take it from here, but I'm available if you need anything. I never want to make an intro and then leave somebody like out to dry. You know, that person ends up taking advantage of their time, or they ask too much of them, or they unexpectedly ask them for money or something like that. I want to always make sure they know that I'm still available to help or support anything that might happen that gets out of hand with the conversation. And occasionally they pull me in to be part of whatever happens, you know, relationally, in terms of business. And then the last piece I was going to say is I always follow up. So after I make an introduction between two people, I'll give it, you know, a week, and then I'll email them back. Hey, did you ever connect with so-and-so? How did that go? What did you think of that? Is there anything else, you know, I can do to be helpful for you? And just make sure it's smooth. And if, again, for some reason it's not a smooth handoff, then I try to fix it. I try to get involved and do what I can to kind of smooth things over with the other person to make sure it really went well. One other very mechanical thing is whenever I'm receiving a handoff on an introduction, I'll always move the person that made the handoff to BCC so they can see that I have made the reply and completed the connection, but they don't have to continue to be involved in the conversation at that point. It's not fair for their inbox, but also the person that I'm taking the introduction from might not want them involved in the details of the conversation. So moving them to BCC is a really cool little trick. And I'll make a reference that in the start of the email, hey, I've moved you, to BCC. Thank you for the introduction. So let me share an example with you of a very recent one I did. This was just a couple weeks ago. Okay, I'm going to use first names here, so hopefully you don't know these people. And I guess if you do,
Are you sharing incriminating things in your introduction email?
It should be fine. Okay, so this was a guy named Jackson. He's a friend of mine that I actually suggested he make this introduction with a guy named Brad. Brad is very connected and very involved and hard to get on his calendar, but someone who I know and is in my network. Jackson is somebody that I know, but he's young and he's looking for new opportunities. But I also think a lot of him. He's a really hard worker, and so I was happy to make this connection between these two individuals. And I don't have any interest in this connection. It really only is because I think Jackson will be a good connection for Brad and maybe a potential employee of his. And if it builds some goodwill for me in the connection, that's great, but this is really about them. So Brad, please meet Jackson, and then in parentheses, CC here on this email. I've known Jackson since he graduated from Purdue with his ag econ degree. I first learned of Jackson when I heard he finished with 180 credit hours, 3 minors, an associate's degree in agronomy, and 2 additional certificates in just 4 years. He also was president of everything. He then worked for Hyde Park Ventures, then into tech at Springbok, and now a partner in a startup. He's also a good dude and one of the nicest folks you'll ever meet. So I literally opened up his LinkedIn page and reminded myself of his background, but I'm not just regurgitating exactly his LinkedIn page. I'm trying to say it conversationally in a way that sounds interesting. And then I always put a personal note on the end. He's a good dude and one of the nicest folks you'll ever meet, right? I want to keep this friendly and familiar. And then I give a paragraph break and I say, Jackson, Brad is a friend of mine. He's also been a support of me and the programs I've been involved with. He has forgotten more about ag tech than anyone I know. He's also newly this director of innovation and making some huge future-looking strides. Paragraph break. I'll let you all take it from here. You both know there's no expectations from either of you, but I love to connect brilliant people together. Please let me know if there's anything I can do for either of you. Jason. So that's the same exact format I've used for years. When I make these connections, you introduce the person whose schedule is harder to get on, you talk about the other person, you CC them, then you break, talk about the second person in an encouraging way. And then I always am available for ongoing help. So that is pretty much everything I know about networking. I feel like I know nothing about networking, but this is how I've connected with people my whole life. So hopefully that's interesting, and I'll take questions at the end. But now you will learn from someone who understands how to network with people better than I do.
No, that's really good. And I realized as you were going through that, that I've learned some of the things that I made notes about, I think, from you and watching you do these things. So thanks for all of that help too. So in preparing for this talk, we each wrote like a 1-sentence description of what we were going to talk about today, and then emailed them to each other. And Jason said, meet cool people doing interesting things, make friends, and change the world. And I said, Jason and Amanda will share their individual approaches to networking, I always put in quotes, to help you connect professionally in ways that aren't rote and pointless. And he said I couldn't say that because it's offensive, but I think that there's so much to organized or structured to networking that can feel very rote and pointless sometimes. Sometimes it's a little over-structured, or we feel like there are like strict parameters we have to stay inside of with what we talk about and what we share and the questions that we ask over and over again in the small talk. And I hate that. And I sometimes joke that I'm only good at networking in very low stakes scenarios. And that's not super funny, but it is pretty true. I later realized though that that's because I like connecting with human beings, but I don't necessarily like the formalities that come along with kind of like traditional or structured networking. So connecting with people is one of my favorite things to do. I'm super extroverted, but I think that those insecure parts make it harder to do in very professional settings. But we also approach, I think, networking very differently because we have different goals. So I'm not looking for clients. I am, I think, almost always trying to build some kind of community, or have some kind of focus on community building. A lot of what Matchbox does and the work that I do at Matchbox is networky in that sense. So we are a community of 300 people doing different kinds of work, and introducing them to each other, I think, is a key component of what we offer our members. So some of that is happening, I think, in my day-to-day work constantly, but from a different kind of perspective. I've also always networked kind of out of necessity. So I went to Ball State for my undergrad, but then I moved to a town where I didn't know anyone. So I moved to Greensburg, Indiana, and worked in women's health marketing there. And then I moved to Lafayette, and I didn't have pre-existing networks in either community. So kind of building a community of people around myself personally and professionally is what I did out of necessity in both of the new communities that I moved into. I just made some bullet points of things that kind of came to my mind and that I think I've honed in on as things to remember in networking environments over the years. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through those, sort of like what Jason did. The first thing I wrote down was join stuff. And like I said before, I have the good fortune of running a thing that people join to meet people. So I'm just there, and I just like sit back and let the connections come to me as they join the studio or come in for meetings and activities. But that's rare, that's not normal. So I always recommend looking for organizations or groups that align with your personal and professional interests. Is scrolling over there. If the topic aligns, if like the thing that people are talking about in that group or in that organization aligns with your professional goals, but the group doesn't feel like a right fit for you, though, I don't recommend investing a lot of time or personal energy. I think that the best way to get true value out of organizations and meetups and structured things is to find things that appeal to you personally and professionally. So finding people you can connect with and finding kind of your fit in an organization is almost more important than the topic being aligned with the kind of work that you do or the kind of work that you're hoping to do. Also, if you can't find groups that kind of like fit that alignment model, start something. So when I moved to Lafayette, I had my oldest was a teeny tiny baby, and I naturally gravitated toward looking for like parenting style groups for networking with people. I had again, I was in like a professional environment where I was surrounded by a lot of people, and I felt professionally well networked, but personally not as well networked. And I looked into the organizations that existed, and I found a couple that were like close to what I wanted, but they weren't quite what I was after. And that's when some friends and I started a group called Greater Lafayette Baby Wearing. And that's, I know for those of you who aren't familiar with Baby Wearing, a weird sounding organization, but it essentially just pulled together parents with similar parenting styles and helped them find their people and a network of friends for them. Which feeds into my next point, let your Venn diagram overlap. So that was kind of my personal network when I moved here. Those were my friends. And then I had work friends, and then I had college friends. And these circles are very like separate, but they didn't have to be. And when I kind of stepped back and looked at the people that were in each of those circles, I realized that there were some really interesting connection opportunities between those circles. And when I let those Venn diagrams overlap and introduced people that I knew through other circles, it kind of like made my whole world a little snugglier. So when I was introducing my college friends to parenting group friends, or I realized that one of my mom friends was a planetary physicist and wanted to start a company, and I could introduce her to my work friends. Those circles kind of overlapping, I think was helpful for myself in bringing my networks together, but also for the people that I was engaging with. My next point was be an introducer, and I feel like you really spent a lot of time on being an introducer and covered all of the tactics and reasons for doing that. I did kind of say the same thing, be strategic and respectful. So asking them if you can introduce them first and getting permission from all parties before an intro. I recently got some like rapid fire emails from someone that I met through my Matchbox work. And they were very, very short and succinct and confusing. So it was an email from someone and two individuals, and it would say, for example, Amanda, meet Jason. Jason is a designer and strategist. Jason, meet Amanda. She runs a co-working space. Best person who meant well. And I was so confused, and I didn't know what to do with these emails. I had no pretext, I had no context. So I dug a little deeper, and I found out that what was actually going on was someone was beta testing a platform for making introductions. I don't think that platform makes any sense, but when you don't have background or give people background or a heads up or do that like background work first before sending an email like that, it can be very confusing and probably will just be, I'll say ignored. Jason doesn't ignore an email. You said to be respectful of their inbox, and you have a lot more, your expectations for the inbox are much higher, I think, than most people's, but I'll just ignore it. The next thing I said is connect with humans. They are more than positions, they're more than organizations. And we live in a community full of, I think, so many interesting people doing amazing things. And connecting with human beings means that you are learning who they are as individuals. And as we all kind of like work through organizations and through positions, those human connections can kind of permeate that and be, I think, more important than that. I'm insecure in high stakes networking environments. I wrote about that here because I think this is how I learned to do this. I realized that I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I realized that in a lot of these structured networking situations, I see a lot of people looking for people doing cool things or people doing really like incredible and amazing things. And my career has always kind of been in this like support role. So I don't think of myself as the person doing the cool thing. I think I'm usually like supporting a cool thing. I've been lucky to get aligned with cool organizations and missions and visions and things like that. But I've always felt like I am supporting that thing versus being that thing. It's probably worth noting that a lot of these events are a lot of entrepreneurs and freelancers and founders and people who really are just like following their dreams. So when I'm like, I make coffee at a co-working studio and help people do some things, it can feel very vague and not my own. So I think tend to like pull back a little bit and focus instead on the people that I'm meeting instead of the work that's being done, so that I can share who I am as a person. I think more secure in who I am as a person than in my work. Anyway, all of that to say, I like to ask a lot of questions, and then I gauge the response that I'm getting from the person that I'm talking to. I won't like conversation 101 you, but if you're making eye contact and watching how people are responding, then you can look for that spark. Like you can look for when you've hit on a question or a topic or an area of interest that really like excites them, and dig into that part of the conversation, because you're going to learn more about who they are as people, what their goals are for themselves and the work that they're doing. And as far as human connection goes, I think that's kind of the path that's worked the best for me. It's harder to do on video. I'm also realizing that we've all been doing Zoom for so long that you're sitting right next to me, but I am like making eye contact with the square on my camera instead, or on my screen instead. I said shoot your shot, and this might seem random, but I think that we all have people that we've seen at events or online or in organizations that we work with or for anything. Like, I would really like to get to know that person. Like, that person seems cool, smart, and connected, and like they can make things happen. And I think probably for people like you, this means nothing because you're like, yeah, then you email that person and you just say, hello, nice to meet you. But for the insecure extrovert, it means we need to kind of put ourselves out there, and it's a little harder to do when we want to make those like aspirational connections. I just decided this year to start doing this. I've admired a lot of people in this community from afar for a long time. And I have kind of like watched and learned about their careers and the paths that they take and the moves that they make. And I think that the best thing to do is to just sit next to them or send a LinkedIn note or an email and ask for a virtual coffee or, a patio pint, and be a little bit bold and put it out there and say, I've been watching the work that you're doing at this organization, and I think that it is really impressive, and I'm learning a lot from you and watching, and I just love the chance to get to know you or learn more or share something that we might have in common. So shooting your shot and putting yourself out there, even outside of those, and maybe preferably outside of those structured networking opportunities, is a great way to meet people that will help you, and hopefully you can help them, and build your network a little bit broader and wider, broader and deeper. My last thing, and I'll be quick, and feel free, you guys, if you have any questions, to drop over in the chat or watching that. Say yes to things, but then in asterisks that make sense. So a lot of, I think, the lists that you'll find on, that's gonna do a thing. You just screenshot all your names so that we can say hello to you all later. But here's the funny part, like I already wrote them all down. Yeah. So say yes to things that make sense. I put them that make sense in parentheses or in asterisks there because saying yes to everything, it doesn't serve anyone, and you do need to be a little bit discriminating with your time. So it's different from saying yes to everything. But if you're invited to meetups or events directly, or asked to be on panels or give talks or judge competitions, say yes when that makes sense, and when there will be other people there that you'll want to connect with and to reach out to and learn more about. This can help for a lot of reasons. There's that like one-on-one opportunity to meet people in an environment where you're meeting a lot of people all at once, but you can also build some personal recognition for yourself and broaden your opportunities for connection, and lean into your expertise. If other people are telling you that you're good at something or that you have something valuable to share about a topic, that's because like they see you doing good work, and they recognize that you're bringing something to the table that has value. So don't say, I'm going to write a whole blog entry later about this insecure extrovert thing, because I think I've really nailed my type here. But don't say like my colleague or my client or my friend or a member of my co-working studio might be better for that. They're asking for you for a reason. That's my whole list.
It's good. I was just laughing to myself because, yes, I did exactly what you were saying that I did. I screenshotted the names because I was thinking to myself, I'm going to send LinkedIn requests to all these people. And I wasn't even thinking that that's networking. I want to network with these people about networking. So, and then it's funny because you already wrote all their names down because you were thinking the same thing. So I think that's just kind of that idea of networking all the time. But it made me think of LinkedIn. I wanted to address really quickly. So social media, of course, is a great tool to be able to connect. I like to keep my social media personal, or at least as personal as I'm comfortable with social media getting. And then I use LinkedIn professionally. So Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are personal, and LinkedIn is professional. And so I have my suggestion on LinkedIn is to take time and fill out your profile. Like, it's really obvious. LinkedIn is always telling you to do it. Just like set aside like a day or like a Saturday and just be like, today I'm going to like, it's kind of like doing your taxes. I'm going to pull out all my old resumes and all my old like, projects, and I'm going to brainstorm things I've done. I'm going to wordsmith it. I'm going to Google some things, and just spend a day and fill out your LinkedIn profile as complete as you possibly can make it. I spent a whole day a while ago just like connecting with people that I'm connected with, and kind of getting a good start on all of that. And I use LinkedIn a ton. I mean, I get a LinkedIn request or two literally every single day. I also think that my rule for adding someone to LinkedIn is I've had a meeting with them once. You don't have to become best friends. You don't have to work together. If you've made a connection with someone in some way, then I'm comfortable sending a LinkedIn request to them and growing my network. I don't accept requests from people anymore that I don't know or haven't been in a meeting with. And I think that's okay to be a little bit selective with those connections. Anyway, so that's how I use social media. Etiquette anyway. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add social media wise and how you do it. But.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more fast and loose with mine, with my social media accounts. I am only technically an old millennial, so I get in that category, but like I just peek in just barely. But that means that, we've had Facebook since college, and so it doesn't seem as personal to me, and I'll get personal there a little bit, but more or less, I keep things like Instagram more personal, and I'm a little bit more discerning there. Pretty open with Facebook. I found that like a weird amount of work gets done in Facebook Messenger. I'm looking at you, Becca. I made a joke just yesterday that we do all of our business on Facebook Messenger. For some, I think people, it's just a really fast and easy way to connect and talk through something that doesn't really require a whole email or is time sensitive. So on my drive here, Becca and I had a phone call on Facebook Messenger. Yeah, we had a call through Facebook Messenger while I was on my way over here, and it worked perfectly. And I like that. And my team at Matchbox, we stay in touch through a shared, like a group message there too. But also I understand that it can get a little bit more personal on Facebook. LinkedIn, I do not have to know you. If it's clear that it's like a really random ad, I won't add it. But if there's like a mutual connection, or I've heard your name before, or I recognize the organization that you work for, or it appears that you're like local, I'll do the ad without having met someone. But one sales pitch in my inbox and it's over.
Yeah, I even will remove the connection if I get a sales pitch. Like, I would just delete the conversation. I don't want you in there anymore.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what we have to share. Okay, good. We got some questions. That's where I was going next. When do you qualify someone who's crossed the professional to personal threshold? What an interesting question. You know what? I don't know what you guys will think of me for admitting this, but I'm not sure I do the best job with finding a line between those two things. I think that I generally treat my professional relationships as personal relationships, or at least I try to get there if I can, just because that's the way I want to work. That's the way I want to be treated. I'm fortunate enough to be in a place in my career where I can say no to work if it means it might make a lot of money, but the person's a jerk, right? Or they're not fun to work with, or they're not respectful. Then I just say no to those opportunities. And so the people that I choose to work with often are people that I like. I respect them. And I also started this thing years ago, even when I was in my 20s, where whenever I would start working with someone, I would address them by their first name in an email. And even if they were like 30 years older than me and in charge of some big company, I would just open the email with first name, comma, go into the email. And I felt like that's just because that's how I want my relationship with you to be. Right. And very often, 90% of the time, they would respond and they'd sign by their first name. And now we're on first name basis, and you just feel like you're connected and you're friends. And so I've always worked that way. Now, the weird side of that is the corollary. Maybe you're thinking, Jason, do you have any friends that aren't actual people you work with? And maybe, I don't know, maybe not. So that part's sad. But the other side is I like all the people that I work with and I consider them friends. So it's a blurry line for me, and I think I like it that way. I don't know if there's other questions, but I want you guys, we've got plenty of time left here. please ask questions. And if you don't ask questions, at least just put like a thumbs up or something in the chat, because you're literally, I see nothing but the Greater Lafayette logo this entire time we've been talking. And I have no idea if you're even listening, or our connection dropped 20 minutes ago and I've been talking to no one. So Bree says something.
Ooh, how do you ask for an introduction? Good question. What's your preference?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this happens a lot at the studio, right? So because it's a co-working studio, is a lot of individuals who maybe like work for themselves or work in small groups. They don't always have like really broad professional networks locally, and they ask for connections often. So they'll say something like, "I see you're connected to so and so." Here, I just like to ask, or prefer to ask, what their intent is. So I do not want to accidentally set someone up for like a cold sales pitch, or something that might be like otherwise uncomfortable or not really what they're asking for. So I like to clarify intent, and then if it makes sense and it seems genuine and not like a hard sell, then I'll usually do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've always just asked really directly. I'll just be like, hey, I see that you know so and so. You know, here's my intentions. You know, I think they may be someone who could help me with X. Would you mind sending me a quick intro? I always give them the opportunity to just send me their contact information if they're comfortable with that and don't want to actually make an intro. Like if they don't want to be stuck on that line, I try to make it easy for them to say, no, would you mind sharing so-and-so's email address? And I'd love to have an actual introduction if you're willing to do so, but if not, I understand. And usually that's enough for me, and I kind of take it if it doesn't happen. I also don't mind myself reaching out to someone on LinkedIn out of nowhere and just saying, hey, you don't know me, but here's who I am in a sentence. Here's what I think you're doing that's cool. Here's what I think might be a good connection for both of us. Do you have, I always make it very short, again, 15, 20 minutes to chat about this at whatever time is convenient for you. Whenever I set up a coffee with somebody, I just did this the other day. I always offer to meet whenever's most flexible for them. And I always offer to bring the coffee to their desk. Like if all I'm asking for is 15 minutes and I'm showing up with 2 coffees and I'm literally walking up to your desk. I mean, who's going to say no to that, right? So I try to lower the barrier to make it as easy as possible to get somebody's time that is normally very, very busy. And then I thank them for their time and I make sure I'm respectful of their time. One other thing I was going to say is one recent exception to this, and this is very rare for me, but I really wanted a connection with someone that is very hard to reach. And I couldn't reach out to them myself. And so I knew somebody that I knew them, and I reached out to that person asking for a connection. The problem is it's a complicated situation, but this other person that I asked for the connection for and myself are in competition for work with this individual. And so I felt like this was a weird ask. The person wrote back basically saying, no, I'm not going to make this connection, but in a really nice way, And this is rare for me, but I pushed back again and I pretended I didn't quite understand. And I was like, look, well, I would really like, this and this and this, could you make this introduction? And they did the second time I asked. So then I got this great introduction for this person. So that's rare for me to be pushy like that. I usually give people an out, but if needed. Okay, we got something else on that.
Yeah, so Becca asked, you mentioned that you like asking both sides before doing an introduction. If it was your initiative to introduce person A to person B and person B says no thank you, how do you take that news back to person A while skirting embarrassment and not making it awkward?
What a good question. I'm not sure I've ever had that happen.
I've never had that happen too. I've been racking my brain this whole time.
I think if it did happen, though, I would probably find a way to make it still valuable for person A, right? I would say, so-and-so is not available right now, but maybe I can help you, or here's another person that maybe is connected either to that person or to the thing you're looking for. Would this be useful to you? Or, and I would make sure that, of course, I would be respectful to person B. They would love to help, or, they're really sorry that they can't right now, or try them again in a month, something like that. I think is what I would do.
I have had the no response, just the outreach to make an introduction and no response. And I usually just say something about how busy they are and yeah, for another connection or something else that might be valuable.
Yeah. Here's a question from Jackie about social media. It is hard to keep them separate. Yeah. So like I said, for me, the line is relatively easy because I use LinkedIn. Also for chat, this is, again, I'm a little bit older, right? So this is how I use chat, for me is, if you are a either personal or professional connection and you need a response really quickly, then I want people to feel comfortable sending me a message, right, a text. But if you don't need something right away, it's disrespectful to me to send a text. It's kind of saying like, I don't really need to know this right now, but I need to know it just because I don't want to wait, right?
Like jumping to the front of the line.
Yeah, it's like your time is more important than my time, is what it says to me. So I prefer email. Then I can get to it when I can get to it, but I also don't mind a text if it is a time sensitive thing. And I only have in the past few years started encouraging my clients to text me, because there are real-time responses sometimes that are nice to make. And I found that it makes the relationship stronger when you're on more of this real-time, kind of communication relationship with your clients. So that's how I do the texting portion of it. And then LinkedIn is the professional, and it's only professional. I don't do any relationship building there. And then the rest of my social media, I try to just make personal. I occasionally will cross over these days with Facebook to something professional, but that's only if I've made a connection with that client and, I might want to go, have a drink with them sometime or something like that. So does that answer that question?
I think it does. Okay. She also said thanks for the advice on keeping it updated, and I think that's really good. And I was pretty like sparse in my LinkedIn for a long time, and I even read other people's LinkedIn's, and I'm like, they put every single thing they've ever done in here, and then I stepped back and I was like, wait, that's the point. Like they're not doing it wrong, I'm doing it wrong. Like I should put everything that I've ever like done or been involved with. And I, again, with the insecurity, I would say like, I don't know if I had enough, like a big enough role in that project to put it on here. I don't know if I was like on that board long enough to put it on here. And that's the wrong filter for LinkedIn. It's like your resume. So if it would go on your resume, it can go on your LinkedIn. Or if you mention it in a job interview, it can go on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, yep, I agree with that. Take your time and build it. That's one of the best ways to get to know each other. And please, this is a pet peeve of mine, please put a picture of your face that you can see on your LinkedIn profile, right? This is like a pet peeve when I'm trying to I was at a meeting and there's 10 people there and I can't remember which name goes with which face. And you have like a picture of your dog on your LinkedIn profile, right? Or you've got like the silhouette of the person because you haven't added a photo for whatever reason. To me, it's essential that you put a picture of your face on there. It doesn't matter if it's fancy or professional or not. I just want to kind of see who you are. I think that's table stakes for LinkedIn.
Table stakes. If you're doing the outline of the person, you may as well be a Twitter egg or Tom on MySpace.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right.
What else we got? Any other questions? We got a few more minutes.
Becca said a professor once told her that it's a live resume. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, did anybody not ask a question yet? I'm going to call you out by name if you haven't, so be ready with one.
Maybe they're just eating sandwiches.
They can still type while they're eating sandwiches. I don't see a question from Haley. Oh, did get a question from Haley. That was close, Haley. Jackie, I think asked one. Fiona doesn't have a question yet. Probably because we answered everything so thoroughly for Fiona. Amy, waiting for a question from you or Renee. All right, I'm going to sit here in awkward silence.
I'm not. That's just you for the last 10 minutes. And I think that's all. Thank you guys so much for spending your lunch breaks with us. I hope we went okay with your sandwiches and salads. Feel free to reach out. My email address is amanda@matchboxstudio.org. Also, hit me up on all the socials.
Yeah, please send me a LinkedIn request. I will also look you up and try to send you one, but I'd appreciate that. It would be very, I think, apropos to all send LinkedIns to one another. And also reach out to me if you have any other questions or there's anything I can do for you. I'm happy to try to be helpful. That's it.
Awesome. Well, I can definitely say that this was one of the most interactive webinars that we have had. So you guys, thank you so much for giving us some great insight to successfully networking in kind of the smoothest, cool people ways. If I can get my hair to look like Amanda's, I would, and then I would make all of them friends. It is perfect. Sincerely, I'm excited to cross paths with more cool individuals doing interesting things in the most professional of manners and really channeling my inner Jason.
Thanks for what you do. with Tippy Connect and all of the work that you do to help people connect and find places to do that.
Right on.
Definitely. I live for it, and this is my center of enjoyment. But I really hope that everyone else feels energized, to do the same, to channel their inner Amanda and Jason's, and to meet more cool individuals. So I'm going to launch a poll really quickly. If I can find it. Never mind, I can't find it. So it's fine. Just a few reminders for Tippy Connect. We are pleased to offer our members, affiliates, and public a leadership series that meets young professionals where they are by defining who they are. So join us for the 4-part series each Thursday in October. More information will be in the follow-up email to this webinar. Thank you all for joining us. If you'd like to rewatch this webinar, you can visit our website at tippyconnect.com or click the link in the follow-up email. Go lead confidently, find your cool and interesting network, and have a fantastic Tuesday.
Thank you, guys.
Bye,
Have a good one.
See you later.